Welcome to Public Health America, a weekly program produced by BronxNet in partnership with Mercy College. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. Here on Public Health America, we speak with experts from an array of specialties across the liberal arts and health professions to provide you with not only the best science, but practical tips to live a healthier life. We also celebrate what studies have long documented, namely the unparalleled value of a liberal arts college education by setting the stage to pursue a career of your choice, increase lifetime earnings, and engage in civil debate. Our experts will share decisions they made and support they received that helped them to beat the odds. By sharing one or two life lessons, their stories may provide you with the inspiration and method to realize your dreams. This is Public Health America. Welcome to Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. I'm very pleased to have with us today our guest, Dr. Jim Samuel, Associate Professor and Executive Director of Informatics at Rutgers University. Jim, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Bo.
So Jim, informatics, it's one of those areas that obviously has come such a long way in recent years and, decades. And yet, who knows really what that exactly means and the work that's done. Why don't you kind of set the table and let us know what is informatics and what is your part of that universe in terms of the work that you do?
Thank you, Bill, once again for having me here. A few quick thoughts. We have a lot of work going on with data. So we've got data science, which deals with the basic methods of managing data. We have statistics. That's the traditional quantitative approaches to modeling and inferring from data. And then we have informatics, which is really taking statistics, taking the methods from data science and mixing it with very specific domain expertise. For example, if we use healthcare data and we do quantitative modeling with healthcare data, with a technological component to it, then it becomes informatics. So very often you hear the word informatics associated with the domain, healthcare informatics, which means we are using statistics and data science to work with healthcare data. Or you might hear public informatics, which means we are taking public governance data and applying data science and statistical methods to it and using the technological component, which could be artificial intelligence. And then you have public informatics.
Got it. All right, that was a great summary and very helpful. So healthcare and public data are two domains in which informatics might be applied. Tell us a little bit about the work you do and what domain are you in and what are you working on these days?
As with many other domains, the most dominant dynamic is artificial intelligence. And the reason artificial intelligence has become the most important dynamic is that previously the work that was done by human analysts, we now find that we have AIs which are capable of doing that work. So in some senses, there is a threat. At the same time, there is an opportunity. The threat is that if machines and artificial intelligences do the work that humans are doing, then we might see a large-scale displacement. But the opportunity is that if some of the more mundane and repetitive tasks can be done by artificial intelligences, then that would free up human intelligence to focus on the more complex challenges. And so we should be able to create better products and services, better solutions, and make better use of human intelligence. So my work focuses on the intersection of data, human intelligence, and artificial intelligence.
Great. That's very helpful. Okay, so the idea is that artificial intelligence can be applied to some of the more day-to-day tasks and then humans can hopefully attend to more complex tasks. Is it fair to ask for some examples of where you think, or either in your own work or just AI generally, where that's happening? Like, what are some of the tasks that AI is doing as good or better than humans, where it makes sense to apply it in that way?
Right. I think the most common example, which pretty much everyone has either tried out or has in some way heard about others using, is ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is a tool that's released by, it's an application released by OpenAI in partnership with Microsoft. ChatGPT goes beyond a normal chatbot, which means the traditional chatbot had sentences prepared, and it would look for prompts in the question, and it would provide in a simplified view, it would provide messages or responses from a canned set of options. With ChatGPT, the machine, the artificial intelligence, is actually creating, it's actually crafting responses based on the individual prompt. Uh, of course, there could be an argument about what's creative and what's not, but that brings us to the idea that AIs can now do what traditionally was done by humans. Example, if in a workplace a person had to respond to customer inquiries, we had multiple stages. Stage one is chatbots, whereby basic questions could be answered through using an internet interface. Now we have reached a level with artificial intelligence where even questions of mid-level complexity can be managed by the artificial intelligence. However, if it were to go beyond the mid-level complexity, then you would need a human manager or a human customer service executive to step in and address the issue.
So again, very helpful. So let me just make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. Are you saying chat dash GPT?
Uh, yeah, it's I think it's one word, ChatGPT. That's the name of the application.
Got it. The name of the application is ChatGPT.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just want to make sure I was hearing you correctly.
Right.
So can you give me an example of a simplistic and like a medium level uh, query where Chat GPT would do as good or better than a human to make a response? Is that a fair question?
Sure. So one of the areas that I've been researching in informatics is the area of ambiguity in responses from artificial intelligence and from informatics models, from data science models, and so on and so forth. So in the process of doing research, I have an option of requesting one of my research assistants, which is a graduate, which usually is a graduate student, of going to the web, spending a few hours searching for the topic that I'm interested in, and providing me with maybe 1 to 2 pages of a brief overview of some initial exploratory research.
Yep.
Uh, and that means the student gets maybe 10 hours of pay for that, and I wait for a day or two to get a response back from the student.
Yep.
Uh, by using ChatGPT, in just a matter of a few minutes, I'm able to save my input time because I can type in the questions directly, which is less time than it takes for me to explain the problem to a student worker. And ChatGPT was able to give me pretty reasonable responses. In just a few minutes, I got 2 pages worth of notes on what ambiguity is and what the challenges and risks are and what are the ways to tackle ambiguity.
So, Jim, that begs the next question, which is how do I get Chat GPT? Is it a software I buy? Is it a service I pay a monthly fee for? How does one get it?
Well, the good news, Bill, is that anyone can use it, number one. And number two, it's as easy as going to google.com and typing in your search query. So instead of that, you can just search for ChatGPT. That will take you to OpenAI's ChatGPT webpage. So
Got it.
it's a web application. There's nothing to install. There's nothing to there's no compatibility issues. There's nothing. As long as you can run a web browser and you're connected to the interface, you will be able to use ChatGPT.
Got it.
ChatGPT comes in at least two levels. One is you can create a basic free account on OpenAI and use the free service that is often queued up, or you could pay a monthly fee. The last I checked, it was $20 to get what's called as ChatGPT Plus.
Got it. That's great. Well, that's good to know. That's exceedingly helpful and exciting. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Dr. Jim Samuel is going to tell us a little bit about his educational experience as an undergraduate and beyond, and how college enabled him to ultimately develop an exciting profession to do the great work that he's doing. This is Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. We'll be right back.
You can now watch MNN, Brick TV, QPTV, and SIC TV on BronxNet. Tune in to BX Omni, Channel 67 Optimum, 2133 Fios during most Sunday evenings. We'll show you some amazing content from our friends at Manhattan Neighborhood Network, Brick TV in Brooklyn, Queens Public Television, and Staten Island Community Television. Every borough represented in the Boogie Down. Epic partnerships for the ages. And catch our new Next channel, produced in partnership with MNN, 24/7 on BronxNet Channel 952 Optimum and 2138 Fios.
Most hiring algorithms would scream me out.
Some bosses couldn't see me as a leader.
I've run this place for 20 years, but I still need to prove that I'm more than what you see on paper.
I've been running code as long as I've been able to reach a keyboard.
This is what I do. It's second nature for me, coordinating 100 details at once.
It's the way my mind works. I have a very mechanical brain.
I sold them on my skills.
You gotta be so good they can't ignore you.
My magic is
Analytics and empathy. That's how I'm getting clients. You have to have the confidence in yourself to show up and defy the odds.
I am more than who I am on paper.
I never got a college degree. And today, I'm the CEO of my own company. People want to tell me I'm one in a million, when actually I'm one of millions. The stars are all around us. It's time for them to shine.
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut. The one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink. Or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking. Now what? It's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed. Better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead. Catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Public Health America. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer. So, Jim, we always start the second part of the program with the exact same question, which is, tell us where you were born and about some of your formative experiences.
Sure, Bill. I was born in Bombay, India. So that's across the planet from where I'm sitting right now. And I'll fast forward to my teenage years, which were as wild as any other teenage teenage years. I did my bachelor's in architecture from the Sir J.J. College of Architecture in Mumbai. After joining, I was already working. I was doing some part-time work, and then I started working on my own business in my teenage years. When I joined school, I kind of moved, given that I was in a school of architecture, I moved towards interior design and designing furniture. And when I was still in my first year of architecture, I was able to set up a furniture workshop. And by the age of 19, 20, I had a fairly thriving business. My only intention when I started off was to try and somehow earn a few bucks to cover my college expense, but uh, just within a year or two, it's just the way things worked out. Uh, and At that point of time, I had a tough decision. I could leave school and focus on the business, or I could continue in school. I was confused, and after the first semester, before the very first year ended, I actually dropped out of college, saying, "Let me go do some things that I'm really interested in. I feel I'm smart enough. I feel I could make it." Uh, and after taking a break of a year, during that year, I had a chance to talk to many successful people, including including a couple of spiritual mentors. That was also a time when I kind of was straightening out my life, and I got very good advice from my spiritual mentors. And I decided to take the advice and got back to college. I was able to keep the business running by delegating some of the managerial work to my teammates, and I completed my degree. In hindsight, that was one of the best decisions I've taken in my life. I think my life would have been totally different, and I would have been much, much more dissatisfied without completing my bachelor's degree. In a nutshell, after completing my bachelor's degree, I got so fascinated that the I was so interested in the knowledge related to my field. I went on to do a master's in architecture, and that eventually, through my work processes, led me to an MBA in finance from Thunderbird, which is now a part of Arizona State University. And finally, I got my doctoral degree uh, from Baruch College, City University of New York. And even after I started teaching with a terminal degree in information systems, I have continued to retain my interest in learning. And I think education is the most powerful thing any young person can invest into. The last thing that I did was a certificate in artificial intelligence from Stanford University. And I plan to keep learning. I consider myself a lifelong learner.
That's great. What a fascinating story. And, always happy to give a shout out to CUNY, this time in the form of Baruch College, as a former dean at Lehman College. But yeah, that's fantastic. So you've just covered a lot. Around what time did you emigrate to the U.S.? Was that a life choice that was related to your education, or was it separate, or how did that work? And part of the reason why I ask is that, clearly there are a great many international students in the United States that are highly successful and really obviously add so much to the cultural life of the U.S. Certainly here at Chestnut Hill College, we have many international students. And obviously, whether in the Bronx or Philadelphia, there are many folks that come from all over the world. So what sort of informed your move to the States?
Bill, I have many interesting stories, and you seem to be asking just the right questions to bring out some of those stories. So in 2000, I began to do business consulting around the year 1998, 2000. I was advising businesses on how to set up businesses, how to manage technology projects, so on and so forth. In 2003, I had an opportunity to meet a businessman from Atlanta, Georgia. He was the CEO of Univest Holdings, Mr. Rick Tomlinson, and I was advising him on his projects and his investments into India and just helping him network in India. Simultaneously, I was preparing for a master's degree. That's my MBA in international finance. And I had received admission at Thunderbird. Parallel to that, Rick offered me to work on his projects in Atlanta, and I knew by then that I had to prioritize my studies. Yet, this particular project was part of an initiative which was called Friends of the Poor, which means it had a very strong social component to it. And I realized at that point of time that it was very important for me to be there. Otherwise, that project would not move ahead, related to the Friends of the Poor, would not move ahead uh, if I would not do so. So at that point of time, once again, I made a choice. I said, okay, I'm going to just give up my admissions, give up my plans for the MBA program for now, postpone it, and go ahead and do this project. So I went to Atlanta, Georgia, worked there with Rick for a few about I think half a year. Almost, I was with the universe for almost a year, and then once I felt that my work was done and I had contributed what I needed to contribute, I kind of reapplied and requested the school saying, "Okay, I'd like to join again." And fortunately, they were able to accept me, so I was very pleased with that. And in fact, I got a better scholarship than the first time around. So that is what got me to the U.S. first, working for Univest Holdings, and then I kind of got back and completed my MBA, and since then I've been in the U.S.
That's great. So, and is Baruch where you got the MBA, or was that Arizona State?
MBA is from Thunderbird, which is now a
Yes.
part of Arizona State University.
And then what'd you do at Baruch?
My PhD, that's from
In-
the Zicklin School of Business at Baruch College. My PhD was in information systems.
Got it. So I am curious then, how far of a leap was a PhD from information systems to informatics? I mean, is that the same thing, or like was your Stanford certificate something that kind of added to your PhD?
Right. So, a couple of points there. Number one, information systems is a broad discipline. It consists of three key things: information, technology, and people. So, information systems work. It's a domain which is multidisciplinary, and it involves these three components. Informatics is a move towards the information side of things. So there are researchers within information systems. Some move towards technology, some move towards people side of it, behavioral studies. I moved more towards the information side of it. But informatics is a distinct field based on the quantitative skills that I had developed from my MBA program and subsequent work with some banks. I was able to. It was a natural fit for me. I love working with information. So that transition, it was a small transition in terms of developing a specific expertise, but it's very strongly related to information systems.
Yeah. And to what extent, I mean, your journey's unique, so it leads to some questions that are slightly unique, perhaps, and that is, so you did architecture, you did MBA. Most people understand what that means. Most people understand what architecture means, but then you did a PhD in information science. To what extent did your background in an MBA, getting an MBA, and possibly even architecture, help or facilitate your work at informatics? Are they linked, or are they more separate in your mind?
For me, they are linked. So it depends upon the individual's intellectual propensities. So in my case, I was always, even as a child, I was always interested in math and the quantitative side of things. Not so good with languages and a few other subjects. So while doing architecture, the greatest intellectual takeaway for me was creativity. I learned to be creative. I learned to think out of the box. That was my greatest takeaway from my studies in architecture. Through my studies to my MBA studies, I focused on international finance. I think that's where I really translated my interest in math and the quantitative side into structured data analysis capabilities. So creativity and creative thinking, the whole idea of thinking out of the box from architecture, quantitative skills and data analysis skills, data modeling skills, financial valuation skills from MBA. And then I had this deep interest in technology. So I saw that for example, when I was working with a bank, I saw that a lot of the jobs that were being done by traders and that were being done by different parts of the bank is going technology. I saw entire banks spending a lot of their budgets into technology. And I knew that technology would be a dominant force in the coming decades. So that's what spurred my interest in information systems. When I went to information systems, I had the benefit of having creative thinking from my early undergraduate studies, quantitative modeling skills from my MBA, and my interest in technology. And really, at that point of time, I already believed that the future belongs to artificial intelligence. So this was my trajectory to move towards that.
Sure. That's great. Well, final question, and with just a little time left, if there was one piece of advice based on that amazing story that you were to give to some of our viewers, particularly younger viewers, about whether or not they should consider college, what would that advice be?
Well, that's the advice that I try to give my kids. They're tired of me repeating this, but the advice is very simple. You have to study math. You have to study a lot more math than the previous generation. That's my generation, or our parents did. You have to study science and technology. You have to be proficient in at least one dominant language. For us in the US, that's going to be English. And you have to be strong in coding. Uh, when I say strong in coding, I'm not talking about everybody becoming a computer scientist. I'm talking about everybody. Just like you learn language, you know to read and write, and that's considered basic literacy. So also, I think it's very important for every person to understand how coding works. So I'm talking about fundamentals and basics of coding. You should know how a script runs, irrespective of whether you want to be a musician or an actor or a medical doctor, or you want to get into management, or you want to be a computer scientist and go towards technology. Coding is the language of the future. If you want to understand how the world functions, you need to understand math, you need to be able to understand technology, you need to be able to understand coding. Your phone, your internet, your life is going to be run by code around you. So I would put a very strong emphasis on these things. And finally, the moral foundations. I think that all of this must be underpinned by very strong ethical and moral foundations. Without that, everything else falls apart.
Sure. And clearly, the beginning of your journey, or part of a beginning, involved that spiritual side. And certainly we have that alive and well at Chestnut Hill College with the Sisters of St. Joseph. I want to thank Dr. Jim Samuel for such a fascinating and wonderful interview. I want to thank our viewers for tuning in. I'm your host, Dr. William Latimer, and we'll see you next time on Public Health America. Until then, take care.